Hi, I'm Scott Seligman, Princeton in Asia, Taiwan, 1973 to 1975. I'm really sorry not to be able to join you tonight, but very glad for the opportunity to talk about Princeton in Asia, what it has meant to me, and why I've been a lifelong supporter. I'm one of those people whose lives were radically and permanently changed by Princeton in Asia. I'll take you back to 1973. I was an American history major, ready to graduate, trying to finish my thesis on Woodrow Wilson, nothing to do with his international policy. And like everybody else in my class, I started to think about the future. And wherever I was headed, Asia was clearly not on the agenda. But like somewhere between a quarter and a third of my graduating class, I paid a visit to the Princeton in Asia office, which was a little cell in the basement of what we then called the Palmer Physics Lab. Today it's the Frist Campus Center. Princeton in Asia had a staff of one. It was Bob Atmore, a lovely older gentleman who made up in enthusiasm what he lacked in knowledge of Asia. And that year there were 3 fellowships available. There was one in Japan, there was one in Hong Kong, and there was one in Taiwan. I told the committee I wanted to go to Japan, so naturally they offered me Taiwan. And the truth is I had never set foot outside the United States. I'd never actually been further west than the Mississippi, and I had never been on an airplane. So this was quite a big experience for me. To be perfectly honest, I had to look at the globe to figure out where Taiwan was. I wasn't entirely sure. But I said yes, and then I got there. I was an English teacher there for 2 years at Donghai University in Taichung. I can't overstate what the experience did for me. It expanded my horizons, and it taught me Chinese, which frankly in 1975 was not a marketable skill. It turned out to be a case of being in the right place at the right time. Just before I got to Taiwan, President Nixon traveled to China. And by the time I made it to Washington in 1979, we finally had formal diplomatic relations with the People's Republic. All of a sudden, there were opportunities for young Mandarin speakers. And the truth is, every single job I had between that time and my retirement had something to do with China or Asia, where I ultimately spent about 8 years of my life in residence as well. Many of my lifelong friends date back to those years in Asia, in Taiwan, in the PRC, in Hong Kong. Also, I did assignments in Korea and in Indonesia. And I devoted much of my career to fostering cross-cultural understanding. Many of the books that I've written have been about Asia, Asians, or Asian Americans, and all because of PIA. When I got back to the United States, I joined the PIA board, and I stayed on it actually for 40 years. Because at the end of the day, America needs people who understand Asia, and the more the better. We need people who can work effectively across cultural divides. Other countries do this way better than we do. Many unfortunate things happen when people misinterpret words and actions. Other countries put a lot more resources into watching and dealing with America than we do the other way around. Too often we sit back and wait for the rest of the world to accommodate us, to learn how to speak English. We assume that their values are ours. And the truth is our future requires understanding cultures different from our own, behaviors different from our own, and also languages which are key. And PIA has a role to play there. That's one of the reasons I give to PIA every year. And when I have had the chance, I've also prevailed on others to do the same thing. I had a friend named Dora Lee, the late Dora Lee, and she was 3 years behind me at Princeton. We were lifelong friends. When she was diagnosed with terminal cancer, we had a long talk about naming beneficiaries in her will, and I made a case for a donation to Princeton in Asia. Now, Dora was never a PIA fellow. She didn't need to be. She was born in Hong Kong. She emigrated to the United States as a teenager. She worked in Asia actually for a good deal of her professional life. Our lives actually continued to intersect in China and also in Southeast Asia. And of course, back in the States. I introduced Dora to Mags, who worked with her to identify the Summer of Service as the chosen vehicle for her gift. Princeton in Asia has remained a constant in my life, and I've been a donor since I returned from Taiwan in 1975. I've also promised to leave a bequest when I go and meet my friend Dora again. When I made the decision, I consulted with Anastasia Vraknos, who was Mag's predecessor, and since then with Molly and Suella and the rest of the team. And I asked what they felt their needs were. And we came up with the idea of endowing language instruction. The East Asian Studies majors can always use more language training, and those with no prior experience in Asia can get a good start with language training, both in the United States pre-departure and also in Asia with intensive sort of in-country language instruction. I think Princeton in Asia's mission is entirely consistent with my interests and my values, as I suspect it is for pretty much everybody in that room with you tonight. So let me end by urging all of you in this 125th anniversary year for Princeton in Asia to think about making a provision in your own wills to continue to support this organization so it can continue its activities in the future. Thank you.